Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I am the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. The first offering of the platform is a public speaking course, and it's called Teach the Geek to Speak. To learn more about it, you can go to teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Heather Eason, and she is the president and CEO of Select Power Systems. She's a proponent for women in STEM, and she's also a blogger and speaker. I'm really interested to learn more about how she got into the industry that she's in, her interest in public speaking, and her advocacy work for women in STEM. Welcome to Teach the Geek interviews, Heather.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
From the bit of research I did on you, I saw you got your undergraduate degree in electrical engineering. What was the motivation for that degree?
That's correct. So my dad actually worked in the power industry, and so that got me interested in power, and electrical engineering is just a natural progression. So I got my undergrad in electrical engineering from UNC Charlotte.
Okay. But then I also saw you didn't stop there with degrees. You got an MBA too. What was the motivation for that?
I did. So I loved being technical and having that good foundation, but I knew that I wanted to expand beyond just doing technical stuff. So that's why I wanted to do the MBA. I wanted to get into the business, the marketing, understanding finance and accounting. And the MBA was a good way to learn the education aspects of that. And then I was able to incorporate that more into my career.
When you got the MBA, was that something that you started right after you did your undergraduate degree, or did you work for a while and then you went to get your MBA?
So I worked for a while. I was a non-traditional student. So I actually had my son before I even started my electrical engineering degree. And then I got married and picked up 3 wonderful stepchildren. And when I graduated with my electrical engineering degree, I'll be honest with you, I needed to get to work. I needed income. So yeah, took a job, worked for several years before I decided to go back and start working on my MBA. And did that in concurrence while I was working full time, raising 4 kids, and I like to say raising husbands.
You know, whenever I hear that, it always makes me laugh because I always think if someone were to say the opposite, if a man were to say I'm raising my wife, people would go crazy.
Probably. That's why I say I jokingly like to say that.
Yeah. It's a joke. Yeah.
To be honest, my husband is a wonderful support system. Any other husband whose wife comes home and says, hey, I'm going to walk away from this high-powered career, good salary, good income, and I'm going to start a business and I'm going to bootstrap it. And it might or might not work, but that's what I want to do. Is that okay? I don't know if any other husband would have been as supportive as he was, because he's like, okay, all right, go ahead. Wow. He didn't even hesitate. So it's wonderful to have such a supportive husband. And I could not have had a full-time career and had kids and pursued the master's and had a career without having a husband that was supportive. And we really split the work of raising the kids and taking care of the house. So he's definitely a major component of my success.
Hey, you know what? Kudos to you for going back to school after having, a kid and then getting married. And I'm sure that in and of itself is quite a bit of work to do. But then to go into electrical engineering of all things, that's not an easy degree to get. So, that I commend you for putting in that kind of work. I guess you saw the benefit of it. And then you started working. I mean, you did start your own company at some point, but for the corporate jobs that you had, what kind of work did you do?
So really what I did is I designed and built the electrical power grid. And I did that for global corporations, as well as smaller private companies. So I had a good, widespread knowledge base throughout the utility industry. And so really just, I tell people if I did my job right and they cut their light switch on and the power came on, the lights came on, I did my job. So that's predominantly what I did.
When it comes to the MBA that you got, is that That's the best way to say this. Is that the information you got from the MBA? Is that information that you could have gotten from just various jobs that, say, for instance, if you were in, I don't know, in sales or business development or marketing, or was it really, or did you learn things in the MBA that you wouldn't have learned anywhere else?
So I'm an advocate of both. I think a traditional education uh, gives me a breadth of knowledge that I would not have been able to experience career-wise. Typically in a career, you stay in a role for 1.5 to 3 years before you move. So with going a traditional education route, you're able to pick up more topics in that same period of time than you would have gotten on the job. Now, on the job is where you get your depth. That's where you really get your understanding of how to apply the concepts and the principles.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. So you mentioned, I didn't even realize this, but Select Power Systems is a company that you started. So did you leave the corporate world because you you were going to start this business no matter what, or did you leave the corporate world for other reasons?
No, I left the corporate world to start Select. It was something that years prior, there was a rumor that started in the industry that I was going to start my own business, and I wasn't at the time. And I was like, "No, you're crazy." And I kept having phone calls from friends, and they're like, "Hey, I heard you're starting your own company," and I'm like, "No." And they're like, "Well, you should. You'd be really good at it." And so I kind of thought about it for a couple of years and did my research. Started putting together a business plan, seeing that there was a market out there, confirming that there was a need. And when I saw the opportunity was right, yeah, that's when I gave my resignation and I walked away from the corporate world and started my company.
I was beating around the bush when I asked that last question, Heather. So I've done a number of these interviews now, and I've spoken to a number of female engineers who have, and some of whom have left engineering to start other things or just start their own businesses. And I've also read quite a bit of what I guess they call the leaky pipeline: women coming into engineering but then leaving at higher rates than men. And I guess at least the prevailing reason that I read about anyway is that the engineering profession isn't all that welcoming to women, and the environment isn't really, I guess, conducive to having them stay. So I was just curious, did that have anything to do with your reason for leaving, or were you just going to you were going to start your own business anyway, regardless of whether you were disgruntled or not?
There are definitely struggles in the industry, absolutely 100%. That did not play into me opening my company. I left the corporate world to open my company because that's what I wanted to do. But I would like to touch base on what you're talking about. So there are just not that many women that graduate with an engineering degree. And when they do graduate with an engineering degree, um, there is a percentage that never go into a technical position. They graduate and they go into sales or marketing or something like that. The ones that do decide to come into the industry, I know from my personal experience, because I'm really passionate about getting female and minorities into engineering and helping them to stay. So I try to be an advocate. I try to reach out. I try to mentor and provide guidance. And I have seen that females do tend to leave around the 5 to 7 year mark. And that does tend to coincide, not directly, but there is a correlation there, I think, of when they get married and consider having children. I don't see the industry as a friend of mine who has a company, and she actually makes devices for nursing mothers in the industry. She says it's not mommy friendly. And so one of the things she's doing with her company is trying to create and sell devices that will help mothers, at least with the nursing aspect of it. And so, I try to definitely reach out and to give guidance. I had 4 kids and I had a career. It can be done. It is difficult. There are biases there. But it's not impossible. And we need women and we need minorities in this industry. And we need to keep them moving through the career chain and moving up the talent pipeline, because that's the only way we're going to change the C-suite, and to change the boardroom, is to get, women and minorities the experience of moving through the career chain. And so we need them to stay. And it's important because we need their perspective. We need their talent. Another factor of that is COVID. I've had more mentors than I would like to say, or mentees than I would like to say, that have decided to actually pause their career and stay home and homeschool their children because of COVID. And I completely understand that position. And if I was them, I might make the same exact call. But it is more difficult in a technology-based career to do a pause, leave the industry for a couple of years, and then come back, because technology progresses and it changes. So that's one of the things I'm also looking at is, when that generation is ready to come back to the workforce, what can me and my counterparts do to help support them? What can we put in place to help them with that onboarding process and get them back up to speed so they can rejoin the workforce when they're ready?
Yeah. You know what? That's a really good point. It's not one I even thought of. Well, I did hear that, more and more. It seems to be, at least from what I understand, mothers are leaving the workforce to stay at home and homeschool their children. I'm always kind of curious as if the workplace was more, maybe perhaps more accommodating, would they have made that choice, or were they going to make that choice regardless? Do you have any sense on that?
I do think companies need to do more. One of the things that I try to do with Select is practice what I preach. So we actually try to be as flexible as we can for everyone, both women and men, because I think men are an important component of raising children too. So we need to give them the flexibility that they need to be home when they need to be home. So what we do is we actually offer the opportunity to work remote. So, you can work from home. They're core hours of 9 to 4. So, if you need to do a doctor's appointment in the morning and then work later, maybe after you put the kids to bed, you can. Or if the opposite's true, you want to start early because your kid's got a soccer or a baseball game that you want to be able to attend, you can do that. So as long as you're available between the core hours of 9 to 4, you can shift your schedule to get your 40 in, whatever is convenient for you and your family situation at that moment. And it's flexible. So it can change depending on what you have going on in your life. And the feedback that I get from my team is that really does make it easier for them to stay productive, stay part of, technical working environment, but also meet their role as a spouse and a parent. So I think policies and things like that would definitely make it easier for more moms to stay in the industry.
Yeah. Another thing that I just think about it, you had mentioned that some women, when they come out of engineering school, they never work in engineering. They'll go into sales or marketing or something else. And I get the sense that if that continues to be the case, then it's going to be even more difficult to move, to change those I guess those C-suite positions for them to be more diverse, because you still have this cohort of women that don't go into engineering. So if they don't go into engineering, they obviously can't go into those C-suite positions. Do you see that as being a potential issue, or is it just, they got an engineering degree, they chose something else, and so be it?
No, I do think it's a challenge. And I think it's important for those of us that have stayed in the industry, to be an example, to show them that, hey, you can have a technical career. One of the challenges, just kind of generalize women, we tend to be more social. And so you just went through 4 years of school, where at least in my case, I was the only female in the class. And then you're looking at starting a career where you might be the only female engineer in the office. And so it's a little daunting, because women do like to have that socialization. They like to have their friends. They like to have their network, and that support system for them. So I understand that some of them look at this and they're like, I really want to go somewhere where I can have friends and I can, have that group of peer network. And it is more challenging when you are the only female in a group to find that support system. You have to be a little more flexible in where you find your tribe, as they like to say. But it is there, and you can definitely find your support system. And there are people like me that are out there that would love to be there to help, the next generation, to support them. I just had a phone call yesterday, and the person called and she said, "Hey, you got 15 minutes? I just need to vent. I just need to complain about what's going on." And I said, "Absolutely." I said, "I'm here for you. Complain all you want." And at the end of the call, I asked her, I said, "Are you good or do you need help?" She said, "No, I just wanted to say it out loud."
So it's a good thing you didn't offer any kind of solution. It's like, this was not the purpose of this call.
Exactly.
You pick up and you listen. That's it. And then put the phone down. You know what? I had a guest on earlier. This was probably months ago, and to this day, even when I think about it, it just marks the difference, perhaps between men and women, or maybe just between her and I. But she was working at a job, and she worked in a lab, but the majority of people in the lab were women. And she said that she eventually quit that job because they never invited her to lunch. And I remember thinking, and she said she would try so hard to ingratiate themselves to where she would even bring in stuff for them to eat and stuff, like snacks and things, and they still wouldn't invite her to lunch. So I think maybe that there's something to it, that perhaps women, like you said, are more sociable and really want that, those work friends. Because I remember thinking to myself, man, I hope I don't get invited to lunch. I'm an introvert. I just want to sit at my desk. Don't invite me no damn lunch. Leave me alone. But to her, it was a big deal. So I think you're onto something. So maybe that's an issue for that. Perhaps more women face than men, for sure. When it comes to the speaking that you do, are there certain topics that you like to speak about, and if so, what are they?
So I really have a passion about women and minorities in engineering and technology fields. So that's predominantly what I speak about. I also do some speaking and some panels around the power industry, electric utilities, renewables, oil and gas, things like that, from an industry perspective. But what I enjoy and what really gets me going is when I'm able to connect with other women entrepreneurs that are engineers. Just last week, I got an email from a female engineer in Anchorage, Alaska, and she had heard one of the talks that I gave, and she found me on LinkedIn and sent me an email, and she said, "Hey, I just wanted to thank you for talking about some of the things that you talked about, because it's nice to know that there are other women out there that can relate to what I'm going through." And so that's really what I enjoy speaking about. That's really what I get excited about. The industry stuff, yeah, it's important for what I do, but I enjoy trying to support women and minorities in STEM.
Nice. And if she eventually gets your number, she can call you to vent. And she knows that you'll be on the line. You'll be done with it. Yeah. When it comes to, I guess, to public speaking, is that something you've always been good at? And if not, what did you do to get better at it?
Oh no, I was not good at public speaking at all. And that's probably something, the personality of an engineer. We're good at numbers, but we lack some of the social graces and things like that. So you really have to train and learn. So I identified early on that was something I needed to work on, and it's something you have to practice. It's a skill that doesn't come naturally for everyone, especially for me. So I took public speaking class in college. I did Toastmasters. I took additional classes for presentations. And as hard as it was to do anytime I had an opportunity to present in my career, I always offered, hey, can I do this? Can I do that? I would give technical presentations at conferences and things like that. So it's not something that comes natural to me. I'm a little more like an introvert like you, I think. And so it's just something you identify as a weakness, and then you work on it, and then you continue to practice, because if you don't do it often, you do get out of practice.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Heather. You can read all the books and look at all the videos, watch all the or listen to all the podcasts you want, but if you don't actually get out there and do it, you're not going to get better at it. So kudos to you. So even in instances when you didn't feel like doing it, you did it anyway, just because you saw the benefit of becoming better at public speaking. When it comes to the presentations that you do you have a process for putting them together? And if so, what is it?
So it really depends on what I'm doing. Technical presentations, I usually almost like write a technical report, and then I take that and I create an outline, and then I put together the slides, and then I fill in the narrative around it. So it starts with the data and ends with the narrative. When I do speaking around supporting women and minority in STEMs, I do the opposite. With that, I start with the narrative. I start with the story. And then from there, I take it back the other way to create the slides from that. So it's interesting how the two are similar, and that I'm giving, a speech and communicating information, but I approach them two different ways.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never heard it explained that way before, but it kind of makes sense. But I mean, with what they both have in common is the narrative, or the story aspect. For the longest while, I wasn't even, it didn't even occur to me to include any kind of narrative or story in a technical presentation. But if any kind of presentation needs it, it's a technical presentation, because they can be boring as hell. I mean, you've given those presentations at conferences. I'm sure you've been in the audience at those presentations as well. I mean, you can't go to those. You can't typically go to those presentations unless you have an energy drink with you, or a coffee, or you're falling asleep. Easy, and it's really important, actually, in those type of instances, to imbue or infuse stories into those type of presentations, just to keep people's attention and keep them awake.
Absolutely, because the goal is to communicate, and they're not going to hear anything if they're asleep and they're snoring, right?
Yeah, especially if the snoring's loud. It's like you're drowning out the speaker.
I mentioned that because that did happen one time early on in a presentation I was giving. There was somebody on the second row that started snoring loud enough that I could hear from the pulpit that I was standing at giving the presentation. That's when I realized I needed to work up my speaking skills and network more stories into it.
Yeah, I'm sure that kind of threw you off a bit. Like, what the hell is that? Oh, shoot. It looks like I gotta get better at this. Keep these people awake. All right, no problem. So you're giving these presentations. Do you ever get nervous before presentations? And if so, how do you deal with your nerves?
I do still get nervous. I still get nervous because even though I've worked on it and I've practiced to get better, I still know it's a weakness of mine. So I'm like acutely aware of the fact that I could do a horrible job, and that's not what I want. I want to make sure that I do a good job, so that, I want to inspire people. I want to give each and every person that's listening something to take away from what I'm speaking about. And so I've got to do my best job to do that. So that's a lot of pressure that I put on myself to do a good job. Sometimes, I think it was Amy Cuddley, she did a presentation, and I forget what it was called. I think it was called the Superman and Superwoman pose, where you're supposed to make yourself as large as possible and, stretch your arms and your legs out, and, kind of like you're getting ready to attack something or take on the world, right? And I know it's totally psychological, but sometimes I do that, and sometimes it works. Sometimes I go out there and I'm still nervous and I'm still scared and I'm not able to get the nerves under control. But you know, as I start to talk, usually the nerves subside and the butterflies go away.
Yeah, I've heard about that, the Superman pose too, and I've always kind of been curious as to whether it works. But you're telling me that sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Do you get any sense as to why it would work sometimes and not other times?
I think for me, it just depends on how much anxiety I've trumped up before I try it.
It's like, this pose ain't doing shit right now. This lady lied. I was supposed to be calm now. I'm still sweating. Yeah, you know what? But honestly, when I think about nerves, I just think about the fact that if you're not nervous, that's likely a sign that you don't care about what you're talking about. So the people that are nervous, they actually care that the audience gets what they're saying, and that that their message gets out there in the way that they wanted to get out there. If you didn't care, then I mean, if you weren't nervous, you probably didn't care what people got out of your presentation, and you probably didn't care that there was a guy on the second floor snoring.
Exactly. Right.
I don't care. I'm just getting this done and getting the hell out of here, man. When's lunch? You've offered some great tips. I really like the one about how you kind of focus your process kind of differs based on the talk that you give. So technical, it's more data and then driving toward the narrative, and then for the speaking with women and minorities, it's the opposite. So that shows some, I guess, some foresight in knowing that because the audiences are different, perhaps the way that you go about approaching putting the presentation together should differ too. So I think that's pretty smart. And then practice is really important too. And then perhaps the Superman pose or Superwoman pose, at least sometimes, can help. But other times, if it doesn't, then hey, you gotta find something else to do. Are there any other tips that you could offer in helping people become more effective at public speaking?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that it's very important that women and minorities use their voice. We have a voice. We have important things to say. We bring a special perspective that we need in the industry. And so please use your voice to speak out, be it just to support your coworker and to give them a little bit of encouragement. Please consider also public speaking. A great first step is a panel where you're up there, you're not by yourself, you've got support, and so if you're nervous, start with some panels, and then you can progress to do more direct topics, speeches that way. But I think it is important that we use our voice to make a difference, because the motto and thing that drives me is, we have hashtag power to make a difference. And, I ask my team every week, what'd you do to make a difference? And I think it's important that we speak up and that we support each other.
That's a really good tip. I never even thought of that before, but being on a panel first, it kind of takes the pressure off because you're not on the stage by yourself. There's other people there too, and hopefully you don't say anything foolish. But that's an excellent tip. Thank you for offering that. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about, or things that you're working on?
I would like to just say that I'm a huge advocate. If anyone would like to reach out to me, I am on LinkedIn. My contact information is on LinkedIn. So feel free to reach out. Ask me anything. I'm here to give advice, guidance. I can tell you what not to do because I've made mistakes, and you can learn from my mistakes and hopefully not repeat them. I can tell you what's worked for me. And then, I can be here just to be a support, a coach, a cheerleader, or I can be here to just let you vent. But whatever people need, wherever they're at, they have support, and I'm here to help. And if I can't help, I promise you I've got somebody in my network that can. So feel free to reach out anytime.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that, Heather. Learn from other people's mistakes so you don't have to make new mistakes. Yeah, I'm a firm believer in that too. Well, everybody, that marks the end of another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson, founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. The first offering of the platform is a public speaking course, and it's called Teach the Geek to Speak. To learn more about it, you can go to teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.